The quantum sensors aboard the galactic research vessel Empirical Truth picked up the derelict human cargo ship long before visual confirmation. Chief Observer CAS 427 flexed his sensory appendages in mild irritation. Another primitive wreck to catalog, hardly worth the deviation from their primary research route. Life signs, he chittered to his science team. Inconclusive. Second Observer Trill responded, her crystalline form refracting the bridge's soft light. But after 3 standard months without power, unlikely. CAS 427 had studied enough human vessels to know their limitations. Their life support systems were laughably basic, just chemical scrubbers and mechanical air circulation. Without power, the crew would have suffocated within days. The Empirical Truth drew alongside the human vessel. Its hull bore the scars of a massive impact, probably a micrometeorite strike that had torn through its power core. Standard procedure dictated they document the wreck and notify the relevant authorities. Prepare a boarding party, CAS 427 ordered. Full containment protocols. I want to know what happened to them. The airlock cycled, and CAS 427 led his team into the human ship. Their environmental suits' lights cut through the darkness, revealing corridors that should have been filled with dead air and silence. Instead, they heard humming. Not the hum of proper engines or power systems. This was different, irregular, mechanical, primitive. They found the first crew member in what had once been the ship's recreation room. The human was alive, tinkering with a bizarre contraption of pipes and salvaged components. She looked up at them and grinned. "Oh, thank God," she said. "We were starting to worry no one would find us. I'm Engineer Jessica Wright. Sorry about the mess. We had to get creative with the life support systems." CAS 427 stared at the machine she'd been adjusting. He recognized parts of an entertainment system, cooling units from food storage, and what appeared to be pieces of exercise equipment, all cobbled together into something that. "This is impossible," he chittered. "This is maintaining your atmosphere." Jessica patted the machine proudly. "Among other things, we've got 3 more like it. Had to cannibalize pretty much every non-essential system on the ship, but they keep the air clean and circulating. Not pretty, but they work." The rest of the crew, all 6 of them, were found alive in various parts of the ship. Each section revealed new impossibilities. They'd created water purifiers from medical equipment. A makeshift gravity generator ran off the kinetic energy of their exercise machines. They'd even managed to maintain basic computer functions by networking their personal devices together. Later, in his private quarters, CAS 427 reviewed the security footage from the ship's backup systems. He watched as the humans, in those first desperate hours after the impact, didn't panic. Instead, they methodically inventoried everything they had. Not just equipment, materials. Where his people would have seen an entertainment system, they saw copper wiring, semiconductors, and cooling fans. Where others would have seen wreckage, they saw resources. He watched Engineer Wright sketch designs on the walls with a broken piece of carbon, explaining to her crew how they would survive. Not with advanced technology or elegant solutions, but with pulleys, levers, chemical reactions, and mechanical ingenuity. CAS 427 began his report to the Galactic Council. "Most esteemed council members, I believe we have gravely misunderstood humanity's technological advancement. What we perceived as primitive might be something far more valuable: the ability to create technology from virtually nothing. They don't just use tools, they reimagine what a tool can be." He paused, then added, "I recommend immediate further study. These humans don't just survive. They adapt in ways we never conceived possible. And I believe this requires our full attention." The quantum transmitter hummed as it sent his message across the stars. Beside it sat a small mechanical clock, a gift from Engineer Wright. It kept perfect time, despite being made from spare parts and debris. CAS 427 found himself watching it tick, marveling at its simple, elegant functionality. Perhaps, he thought, it was time for the galaxy to learn a different kind of engineering. "This experiment is highly irregular," Council Member Vreeks declared, their bioluminescent patches pulsing with disapproval, placing multiple species in artificial survival conditions, based on one observer's report. CAS 427 stood firm before the Galactic Council chamber. The humans survived 3 months by rebuilding their technology from entertainment devices. Imagine what they could teach us about resource utilization and adaptive engineering. The council chambers fell silent as the members communicated through their neural networks. Finally, High Counselor Isa spoke. "Very well. We will conduct your experiment." Jessica Wright stared at the supply crates dropped onto the dusty surface of XO3, a barely habitable planet chosen for what they were calling an emergency response simulation around her. Representatives from 7 advanced species did the same. She recognized the Volri with their crystalline bodies, the multi-limbed Tekken, and several others she'd only read about. These supplies, announced the automated system, represent standard emergency provisions. You have 3 planetary rotations to establish basic survival infrastructure. Good fortune to all participants. The Volri immediately began unpacking their crate, organizing the contents with mathematical precision. The Tekken gathered in a discussion circle, likely sharing plans through their hive mind. Jessica just kicked her crate over and started pulling everything apart. Human Right of Volri called out, their crystalline form shimmering with concern. "You are damaging valuable resources." No, Jessica grinned, already stripping wiring from a portable shelter unit. "I'm finding new resources. Anyone want to learn how to build a solar still?" Nobody did. By sunset, the other species had set up their shelters according to manual specifications. Jessica's shelter lay in pieces around her as she completed a water purification system that could process twice the volume of the standard ones, using parts from the shelter's ventilation system and thermal lining. Primitive destruction, she heard one Tekkan whisper to another. Jessica just smiled and kept working. Day 12 brought the first crisis. The Volri's precision-engineered water recyclers failed under the planet's mineral-heavy atmosphere. The Tekkan's power systems couldn't handle the temperature fluctuations. Jessica's crude but effective solutions kept working. "It's not pretty," she explained to a group of increasingly interested aliens, "but see how this mechanical filter system doesn't rely on any electronics. Can't fail if there's nothing to fail." She taught them to think differently. How a broken power cell wasn't trash, it was copper wiring, chemical compounds, and conductive materials. How a cracked solar panel could be repurposed into dozens of smaller tools. In the observation chamber, CAS 427 watched with growing satisfaction as the other species began to gather around the human camp in the evenings. They came first out of desperate need, then out of genuine curiosity. "What is that?" Construction Council member Vrix asked, pointing to a strange array of salvaged materials taking shape behind the human camp. According to their records, CAS 427 replied, "It appears to be the beginning of a radio telescope." A radio telescope? From emergency supplies? Yes, and if my analysis is correct, they're building it to track the magnetic field fluctuations in the planet's second moon. The human believes it might help predict weather patterns. Vrix's bioluminescence flickered with disbelief, but they were only given basic survival equipment. Precisely, CAS 427 said, "To us, that's all it is. To them, it's raw material waiting to be reimagined." He gestured to the screens showing the other camps. "Notice how the Tekkan have begun disassembling their failed systems. Last week, they would have considered that sacrilege. Now they're learning to see possibilities instead of just problems." On the main screen, Jessica Wright was teaching a young Volri how to create an electromagnetic pulse detector from spare parts. The device was crude, ugly even, but the readings on its makeshift display were as accurate as any standard-issue equipment. "They're not just surviving," CAS 427 noted. "They're innovating. And more importantly, they're teaching others to do the same." Vrix watched in silence as Jessica sketched designs in the dust, surrounded by eager learners from multiple species. Perhaps, they admitted, we have been measuring advancement by the wrong metrics. In the distance, the radio telescope grew steadily taller, a monument to human ingenuity built from scraps and spare parts and a symbol of a changing galaxy. The first warning came from Jessica Wright's makeshift radio telescope. "These readings don't make sense," muttered T-Lax, a young Volri who had become one of her most dedicated students. Their crystalline form vibrated with concern as they studied the crude but effective monitoring equipment. Jessica traced her finger along the pattern of spikes on their salvage display screen. Actually, they make perfect sense. We've got a massive solar storm heading our way. She looked up at the deceptively peaceful sky of HFY. And it's going to be bad. In the observation chamber, alarms blared. This wasn't part of the test parameters, Council Member Vrick said, their bioluminescence pulsing rapidly. Joe 3's star should be stable for another century. Apparently not, CAS 427 replied, watching the readings with growing concern. The question is, do we evacuate them? Our protocols might not matter soon. Look. On the screens, the storm's first electromagnetic pulse had already reached the planet's upper atmosphere. In the Tekkan camp, their advanced shield generators flickered and died. The Volri's crystalline environmental systems went dark. One by one, every piece of sophisticated technology on the surface began to fail. Every piece, except for what the humans had built. It's not pretty, but it'll work, Jessica shouted over the howling wind as she directed the assembly of a massive electromagnetic shield. Her original radio telescope now formed its backbone, reinforced with scavenged metal and surrounded by a web of salvaged wiring. The electromagnetic wavelength is too complex, called out Xenora, one of the Tekkan engineers. Our most advanced systems couldn't touch. That's the problem, Jessica interrupted, stripping more wiring from a dead power unit. Your systems try to counter every wavelength perfectly. We don't need perfect, we just need good enough. She pointed to the crude coils she'd taught them to wind. These won't stop the radiation completely, but they'll diffuse it enough to keep us alive. Sometimes a simple solution is more robust than a perfect one. The storm raged overhead, filling the sky with deadly radiation that would have killed them all if they'd relied on standard protection. Instead, Jessica's cobbled-together shield hummed and crackled, its crude but effective design dispersing enough of the storm's energy to protect the huddled groups beneath it. How, asked T-Lax, watching in wonder as simple mechanical gauges showed the shield holding steady. How did you know this would work? Jessica grinned despite the danger, using a piece of scrap metal to adjust one of the coils. Because sometimes the best technology isn't about having the most advanced solution. It's about understanding the basic principles so well that you can rebuild them from anything. She gestured to the various aliens working together to maintain the shield. Look at us now. Volri maintaining mechanical generators. Tekkan monitoring analog gauges. A month ago, you wouldn't have touched this primitive technology. But that's the thing about engineering, the fundamentals never change, even if the tools do. In the observation chamber, CAS 427 watched with pride as his hypothesis was proven right. The humans hadn't just survived, they'd protected everyone, using technology that any advanced species would have dismissed as primitive just weeks ago. Remarkable, Vreeks admitted, watching Jessica teach a group of aliens how to adjust the shield's coverage using nothing but mechanical components. They're not just good engineers because they can build things from nothing. They're good engineers because they understand why things work, not just how. Exactly, CAS 427 said. And look at the others now. They're not just following instructions, they're beginning to think like humans. Seeing resources instead of ruins, possibilities instead of limitations. On the surface, the storm continued to rage, but beneath Jessica's makeshift shield, something unprecedented was happening. Species that had prided themselves on their advanced technology were learning to strip problems down to their basic principles, to see solutions in the simplest of materials. Perhaps, Vreeks said quietly, it's time we reconsidered our definition of advanced technology. The shield hummed overhead, a testament to human ingenuity, ugly, imperfect, and absolutely brilliant. The grand chamber of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. On the massive display screens, footage from the XO3 experiment played silently, Jessica Wright building impossible devices from scraps, other species learning to see technology in a completely new way, and that final, brilliant shield that had saved everyone from the solar storm. This was not an accident, High Counselor Isa announced, breaking the silence. The supply limitations, the harsh environment, even the faulty equipment, all were deliberate. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. CAS 427 felt his sensory appendages twitch in surprise. We gave the human inferior resources, Vreeks added, their bioluminescence steady now. The Volri received highest-grade materials. The Tekkan had advanced power cells. Every species was secretly given advantages except humanity. And yet Isa continued, the human not only survived but thrived. More importantly, she taught others to do the same. The chamber erupted in chittering and crystalline harmonics as council members processed this revelation. 6 cycles later, Jessica stood before the newly established Galactic Engineering Academy. The building itself reflected the lessons learned, a perfect blend of advanced technology and mechanical simplicity, with redundant systems that could be maintained with minimal resources if needed. Welcome to the first class, she addressed the assembled alien students from every advanced species in the galaxy. I know many of you are expecting to learn about human engineering secrets or special techniques. She grinned. But that's not what makes humans the greatest engineers in the universe. She held up a broken power cell. What do you see? A damaged component, answered a Tekkan student. Useless technology, added a Volri. Jessica smashed the power cell against her desk, making several students flinch. She picked through the pieces, holding them up one by one. I see conductive materials for a basic circuit, chemical compounds for a battery, housing that could be reformed into tools. That's the real secret of human engineering. We never stop seeing possibilities. In the observation room above the academy, CAS 427 watched with council member Vreeks as Jessica began her lesson. Did you know, Vreeks said, that we found her original drawings for the radio telescope? She began designing it the moment she saw the supply crates, before they were even opened. Not surprising, CAS 427 replied. Humans don't see things as they are. They see things as they could be. We're already receiving reports from across the galaxy, Vreeks continued. Ships incorporating mechanical backup systems, colonies developing hybrid technologies, species that once looked down on primitive solutions now embracing them. Below, Jessica was demonstrating how to convert a standard food synthesizer into a water purification system, her students watching in fascination as she dismantled advanced technology to reveal the simple principles beneath. The galaxy is changing, CAS 427 observed. No, Vreeks corrected, their bioluminescence brightening. We're learning to see it differently, through human eyes. That evening, Jessica added a final note to her teaching log. Most species in the galaxy pursued engineering as a path to perfection. Humans pursued it as a path to survival. They learned to build perfect machines. We learned to rebuild anything into something useful. And that's the greatest engineering achievement possible, not creating technology that never fails, but creating engineers who never give up. In orbit above, ships of all species arrived daily, carrying more students eager to learn the human way of engineering. Their own technology was more advanced, their materials superior, their computational power vast. But they came to learn something more valuable: how to see the extraordinary in the ordinary, how to build the impossible from the insufficient. They came to learn how to engineer like humans. CAS 427's final report to the Galactic Council was brief. The experiment is concluded. The results are clear. We thought we were testing human engineering capability. Instead, they tested our understanding of what engineering truly means. They showed us that the greatest engineers in the universe are not those who create the most advanced technology, but those who can create any technology from anything. And in doing so, they've given us something far more valuable than new technology. They've given us new possibilities. End report. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you loved it. Please remember to subscribe if you did like it so you can see more videos like this. And please give us a like and a comment too. I'll see you in the next one.